Welcome to the Horror Next Door. This is all the horror movies we watched in October 2022. Links to our Letterboxd accounts are in the description box below. If you like this video, please consider subscribing. So for the month of October, again, this year we watched a horror movie every single day. Sometimes we watched more than one. So because of that, we're going to try to breeze through these movies as quickly as possible and give you our recommendations so this video isn't 10 hours long.
Antiviral from 2012, which we watched on Tubi. It was about to expire. It was a movie I had already seen, but Psycho had not, so I wanted to show it to him before it got taken down. This is directed by Brandon Cronenberg, David Cronenberg's son, and I have to say that so far, based on what Brandon is putting out, I'm more of a fan of his than his papa. Anyway, this movie's crazy. I really love it. I think it is beautifully shot. The stark white in almost every location and scene is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just so beautiful. And it's basically just about people literally wanting to get sick from celebrities. Like they want to be infected with what celebrities have. It's such a weird, crazy idea and it's super disturbing. I highly recommend this movie.
I also recommend this movie, and I agree with Hellcat's statement that I'm probably more of a Brandon Cronenberg fan than a David Cronenberg fan. The only other thing I would add is Caleb Landry Jones is a creep. He was also in Get Out, and he was a creep in that, so he's just really good at playing really creepy characters. So for that, I applaud him. The Innocents from 2021, which we watched on Shudder. This movie is probably riding that thin line of what is a horror movie and what is a thriller, but it is on Shudder, so whatever. I actually really recommend this movie. I think it was really well done. It's another one of those rare movies where there's a lot of children actors pretty much taking all the main roles, and they all knocked it out of the park.
I agree. The acting was out of this world. This movie had non-stop tension. It was so upsetting and disturbing and just really good at holding our attention. I highly recommend it. Speak No Evil from 2022, which we also watched on Shudder. If you've encountered anyone that has seen this, you probably already know how insane and effed up it gets. I think a lot of the runtime, we just felt frustrated by the characters' decisions and actions. But it's not like a silly slasher flick where you're just like, oh my god, these people are so annoying, please die. You know, it's much more rooted in reality. It's basically just about what is that fine line between being polite and going overboard, and sometimes you just have to say no. Definitely recommend this movie, but just know that some really effed up stuff happens.
I pretty much agree with everything that Hellcat said. I recommend this movie as well, but just be prepared to be completely frustrated with this married couple and the child that they have. Knocking from 2021, which we also watched on Shudder. I would also recommend this movie, but I feel like I would probably put it a little further down of a recommendation than the previous movies we just talked about. I guess I just feel like I wasn't too thrilled with how it ended. I kind of felt like it was a little just predictable, I guess. But other than that, I mean, the whole knocking thing and her trying to figure out what's going on was very interesting. So for that, I recommend it.
We were definitely working on watching a bunch of the films that we've spoken about in our favorite trailer videos, so you'll see a lot of those. This was one of them, and I do think that we were a little bit more psyched for it in comparison to how much we ended up actually liking it. I feel like it just felt a little bit slower, like it was dragging in parts, even though it's only 78 minutes. I actually really liked the ending, and that was what made me overall give it the rating that I decided to give it, because at first I sort of was just not really liking it, but I do recommend that you check it out. Hatching from 2022, which we watched on Hulu. This is another film that features a child actor as the main character, and this little girl did a great job. She really carried this film. I thought that the relationship between her and her mother really helped carry this movie. I almost want to say maybe if you have any kind of parent issues, maybe you would like it a little bit more, but I think that it's a really well-made film with lots of really gross and weird moments and some really cool practical effects, so I highly recommend it.
I think the main thing that I liked about this film is it just got weird, and then it just got even more weird, and it just kept getting weird. And obviously that's a good thing in my book. I just really like this one, and I don't want to give anything away, so I highly recommend it. Check it out. Spree from 2020, which we watched on Hulu. I remember watching this trailer, and we actually debated about talking about it in favorite horror movie trailers, but we ended up not talking about it. We kind of just added it to our watch list and said we'll get to it one day, and we finally did. I like when movies do innovative things with cameras and stuff. I'm a fan of found footage movies. I'm into that. So the whole idea of, hey, let's put a bunch of GoPros in a car and make a movie out of it, like that's intriguing to me. And I thought this movie had a really interesting premise. I just felt like they kind of didn't hit the mark. At one point, it almost seemed like either unrealistic or just almost like whatever he's doing isn't real. It's a big joke or something. And all of a sudden, he's just going to come out and be like, gotcha. It doesn't. Just comes across as corny at that point. So I do not recommend it.
I was just intrigued to see this based on the fact that it is supposed to be based on true events. And I know a lot of movies say that, but even if the filmmakers deny certain references, there are literal mirrored images and sayings and things like that that happen in this. We like Joe Keery from Stranger Things. It just seemed like it was going to be a cool movie. I definitely was disappointed as well, though. I agree with what Psycho said. It sort of felt like a parody at some point more than anything that was trying to be disturbing, beating you over the head and exaggerating these characters, so trying to make their point. It's like, we get it. So unfortunately, I also don't recommend it. Hellraiser 2022, which we watched on Hulu. I definitely liked this a lot more than I expected to, which I'm very happy about. Basically, my main takeaway was that the Cenobites were awesome. I know I've seen a lot of reviews of people saying they really like the main character. I really wasn't a fan, and I think that some of the character stuff just took too long. So I was just sort of like, let's get to it. It was still entertaining. I just certainly don't regret watching it, and it could have been way worse. So I do recommend it.
I feel like there were a few things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way that I didn't like about this movie, but it was very minor stuff, nothing that really derails the whole movie. So overall, I really did enjoy it. I think the director, David Bruckner, did a great job. I also think Jamie Clayton did a great job as Pinhead, or lead Cenobite. Even though I love the Hellraiser puzzle box, I do think what they ended up doing with the puzzle box in this film was actually really clever and really cool. How it has like different stages and it transforms into all these different shapes and things. I thought that was really cool and just neat. The only other thing I would say is this is another example of someone like me who loves physical media. I hope this thing gets released on Blu-ray so I can buy it. I hope it's not just stuck on Hulu forever, but recommend it. Go check it out. Terrifier 2 from 2022, which we watched in the movie theater. We actually saw this opening weekend. I bought tickets way in advance. I was just happened to be playing at a theater. A little bit of a drive, but nothing crazy. First and foremost, I just want to say that I highly recommend this movie, and I think you should support it in any way you can, because I think the director is awesome, and I just hope he just keeps turning out more movies. I know they're talking about making a Terrifier 3, but maybe make something else first and then make a Terrifier 3. Just love to see something else from him. I know when I watched the first Terrifier, I wasn't really into it the first watch, but then I watched it a second time and I got it. Like, I don't know, it just clicked with me the second time and I said, you know what, this is awesome. And with this one, I feel like, there's all kinds of different locations, just more of a storyline and things. I feel like I really enjoyed this one more than the first one.
I agree with supporting this movie in whatever way you can. I think by the time this video is out, it'll probably be out of theaters, but I don't know. They keep extending its run, which I think is so awesome. I'm really, really glad we went and saw it opening weekend. We also contributed to the Indiegogo, and it was super fun to see our names up on the screen in the theater. I just think Damien Leone is a very passionate filmmaker. He's great with special effects. I, too, would like to really see him do some more work. I think Lauren Lavera was a great lead and she did a good job carrying the film. There are some good supporting actors too. And obviously, David Howard Thornton portraying Art, amazing. He never says a word, but he has so much character. It's insane how disturbing and violent and gory this gets, but it's still funny. And I don't even know how that's possible, but it is. It's just a good time. And I will cherish the memory of going to see it in the theater because it's just freaking awesome. And I can't wait to buy it on Blu-ray so I can watch it again. The Feast from 2021, which we watched on Hulu. This was another trailer we discussed. I have to say I was a bit disappointed with it. At times it was very slow, at times it was very weird. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting. I think by the trailer you might feel you can predict what's going on, but you definitely won't. Anyway, it's not that I wouldn't recommend it. I would just say that if you're going to watch it, just know that you're not going to get anything super exciting. It's more character driven and I guess quieter, more calm than I expected until shit hits the fan at the end. I recommend it, just not as a priority, I suppose.
This was one movie that I was really looking forward to seeing, but I feel like, again, just missed the mark for me. I feel like everybody did great acting wise, especially the lead actress. Pretty much everybody in this movie is just really weird. There's some stuff that people are doing and just standing around and being creepy and stuff. But overall, it just wasn't as satisfying as I hoped it to be. So I would say I don't recommend it. Black Pumpkin from 2020, which we watched on Tubi. This is a random Halloween movie, which we apparently have a ton of just Halloween themed horror movies that are just sitting on our Tubi list. So we threw this on just to check it out, just to have fun with it. And we did have a lot of fun with it. There was several things that we just kind of were like, what is this? I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it, but it's definitely something that if, it's like almost so bad it's good type of deal. There was one moment in particular that we really just kind of laughed at and had to rewind it and play it again. The two main kids are sitting in the car and the killer had killed somebody and there's blood all over the windshield and he can't see anything. And I think the one kid said like, "Where'd he go?" And the other kid's like, "I don't know. I can't see shit." And it's just the way he delivers the line. It's superb. It was hilarious. We actually made a little video of it and threw it on our Instagram story, which you should follow us so you can see random stuff. Overall, I wouldn't recommend this movie as a good horror film, but I would recommend it as a blast to watch.
You have to go into this if you're going to check it out knowing that it's not necessarily well made or well acted. It's funny because the two main boys are probably the best actors in the movie. So I also recommend it because it was a blast. We laughed a lot. We had a good time. Recommend it if you're down for just having some fun and watching a goofy Halloween flick. A Banquet from 2021, which we watched on Shudder. Another movie that we talked about, just went weird places I didn't expect it to go. I put this and The Feast together. I was sort of like grouping vibes and plot lines and things like that when I made our list for what we were going to watch in October. And it actually really reminded me a lot of The Feast because I thought there was going to be a lot more to it than there was. It was a lot more subdued and character driven and just not a whole lot happened. The ending was very unsatisfying. I don't know that I would recommend this movie. I think you kind of would have to be in the mood for sort of an artsy, toned down kind of a vibe if you were going to watch this.
So we both agree that this movie had some good acting. All I want to say is, I feel like this is just another one of those movies where they had a cool premise, which is something happens to this girl and she doesn't eat, but she's not losing weight. But then they don't do anything with it and it doesn't go anywhere and nothing's really revealed. You watch the whole movie in anticipation of like, okay, what's coming? What caused all this? Are they going to explain it? No, nothing happens. I'm sorry. Nothing happens. So I don't recommend it. What Josiah Saw from 2021, which we watched on Shudder. I would recommend this movie, but I just feel like it's kind of average. It's nothing to run out and see. There probably is some stuff in there that might offend certain people, maybe. I don't know. There is an interesting twist at the end, but wasn't too thrilled with it, I guess.
I know that I enjoyed this film more than Psycho did. It did have a lot of sensitive and disturbing instances and situations in it. I mean, it is about a screwed up family, and there's a lot of stuff that can entail. So without spoiling anything, I would definitely say that ending was a major shocker. I think the acting was great across the board. I also thought it was kind of cool that it was told in little chapters, even though it wasn't necessarily an anthology. They were showing the perspective of each of the kids, and it was just a really cool way to tell the story. I do recommend this film. Watcher from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. Well, we did talk about this flick as well in our trailer videos, and we were not disappointed by this one. It was pretty tense throughout. It was definitely entertaining. Casting Bern Gorman in the role that they did was a good move. I don't want to spoil anything or whatever, but he really was good at playing a creepy dude. The ending was extremely satisfying. I mean, this isn't reinventing the wheel. It's been done, but again, it's supposedly based on a true story, which makes it a little bit more interesting, and you just root for the Micah Monroe character throughout. I would recommend it.
So I really enjoyed this movie too. My only complaint would just be the overly used, overly cliche, nobody believes the woman premise. It's been done to death. Can we stop doing it? There's things you can do if, at the very least, the significant other believes the woman, and then maybe you take that in some direction. But to just have everybody in the movie be like, no, that's not true. So dumb. It's played out. Anyway, rant over. That being said, I did still like the movie because of how everything came to a close at the end. Not going to give anything away. Go check it out. Dark Glasses from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. This was a anticipated film from both of us, especially Hellcat, as we are Dario Argento fans. I feel like this movie definitely had some crazy gore effects and an interesting storyline, but really feel like it fell a little flat and kind of dragged at certain points. So I would recommend it if you are, a Giallo fan and a Dario Argento fan. But if you're not into that kind of thing, then you're probably not going to like this.
I do hate to say that I was a little bit disappointed in this, but there were just some parts that were outlandishly ridiculous. I cannot get over when they're in the water and the snakes come out. I think about that scene and it just bothers me so much. It was so stupid. Before this even came out, a lot of reviewers and buzz was saying that this was Argento returning to form and things like that. I do not agree. I do think even though the lead actress does a serviceable job, this sort of just felt like a joke at times. It felt like they were poking fun or making a parody of something. I don't even know. I still recommend it because I've seen worse. I've seen worse Dario Argento films, but just know it's not the best. The Booth from 2005, which we watched on DVD. I picked up a handful of Asian horror flicks at Big Lots again. They were like $2 or $3 a piece. This was one of them. I definitely know I liked it more than Psycho. I was very invested in it. I don't think it was ever boring. I thought there was some great acting. I just love how they weaved the past and the present and how they revealed everything and the outcome. I definitely recommend this film.
Even though I wasn't completely blown away by this, I still enjoyed it. There were some flashback scenes or reveals, so to speak. They were kind of messed up without going too much into it. To me, it was just kind of average, so I guess I would recommend it. Halloween Ends from 2022, which we also watched in the theater. There is a lot that I can say about this movie, and I'm just going to try to get it all out as quickly as possible so I'm not ranting for 20 minutes. To begin everything, I just want to say I don't love this movie, but I also don't hate this movie. I know a lot of people are shitting all over this, but a bunch of other people are giving it, in my opinion, way too much praise. They're ranking it as like top 3 Halloween movie of all time. And I don't think so. And then other people are saying it's the worst one of all time. And my rebuttal to that is have you seen Halloween Resurrection? Go watch Halloween Resurrection because that's the worst one in the series, not this. So of course, I wish Michael Myers was in it more, but it is what it is. I kind of knew a little bit about some of the stuff that was going to happen in the movie. Obviously, it played out a lot different than what I heard. I guess this is going to be spoiler territory if you don't want to listen. I kind of heard about the Corey character character and that he was going to put on a Michael Myers outfit and everything. When I first heard that, I thought, oh, he's going to become Michael Myers and he's going to be in the whole movie. That's stupid. But then when I watched the movie, yeah, he puts on the mask and everything, but he really only does one thing, and then the movie diverts and he's not wearing the mask anymore. If they had done it the other way I originally thought, then I really would have hated this movie. Do I feel like it's a good Halloween sequel to Halloween Kills? No. I guess one of my biggest gripes is just the fact that Halloween Kills ends with Laurie Strode walking out of the hospital with a knife in her hand, and she's like, I'm going after him. But then the beginning of this movie picks up 4 years later, and she's just living in a house, baking pies, and writing a book. What happened to that momentum? That's the thing that really irks me the most about the whole thing. At least it's not trick or treat, motherfucker. I would recommend it.
All the hate is definitely unjustified. It's incessant and it's just over the top. I understand that it's not what people wanted, but what they need to understand is that just because it's not what you wanted doesn't mean it's bad. Are these 3 Halloween films that we've had recently cohesive? No. I feel like this makes no sense after you've just seen Kills. But I thought it was cool to have a Laurie that was like still a little bit badass, but also like just being a cute grandma chilling, Let her have her little love life and her memoir or whatever. Like, what's the big deal? They have to end it, and they wanted her to have a nice ending. They didn't want her to be miserable. You would think that losing her daughter in Kills would have made her even angrier and want to get revenge even more, but maybe it had the opposite effect. Maybe it just snapped her out of her little trance of revenge, and she was like, you know what? I don't have that long. I need to just live while I'm here. That's what I took from it. Another thing that I took from it was, and this might sound weird, but there were parts of this film because of the love story reminded me of Twin Peaks a little bit. I was picturing like Laura riding on the back of James's motorcycle. If you haven't seen Twin Peaks, I'm sorry. I'm a David Lynch freak. I can't help it. I have to mention him all the effing time. Another thing that I loved about this is the effing soundtrack. Like when the Dead Kennedys came on, when the Cramps came on, I was just like, hell yes. I also loved the score. The opening credits were fracking awesome and the music was great. When Darcy from The Last Drive-In popped up at the DJ station, I went, oh my gosh, it's Darcy. Like there were just a lot of cool little things. There were some nods here and there. There were some shots that echoed shots in some of the other films. Again, both of us could probably go on and on about it, but I just think that for me personally, the good outweighed the bad. It's just an average film. I'm not going to go run out and give it 5 stars and buy 10 posters and hang them in my house or anything, but there were cool things that I liked about it. And even though there were things I didn't like about it too, I would still recommend the movie. Also, P.S. Danny McBride, I love you. The Pumpkin Karver from 2006, which we watched on Tubi. This movie is awful. I am so sorry if any of the filmmakers or actors or whatever in any universe ever happened to see this, but holy crap. We looked up the director and he's never done anything else. And I'm like, maybe they just had a really hard time making this. Maybe there were budgetary issues. I don't even know. But it is really, really, really bad. And I cannot recommend it. The only way that I could even see anyone wanting to watch this is to just see how weird and odd and unrealistic the actions and dialogue are.
All I'm going to say is that I do not recommend this movie. Glorious from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. This movie was actually really entertaining. I highly recommend it. It was cool to hear J.K. Simmons like doing a voice of the monster thing. I don't know. I just had fun with this one. Go check it out.
Same. Ryan Quanten does a great job of carrying this flick. I mean, you're pretty much watching him the whole time, and it's just mostly in one location in the bathroom. It was lit really cool. It was shot really cool. It definitely has weird and wild and wacky moments. I would recommend it. Bloody Hell from 2020, which we watched on Shudder. Finally got around to this one from our prior favorite trailers, and it was so much fun. I'm so glad we watched this and Glorious back to back. They actually make a pretty great double feature just because the tone of them is somewhat similar. It's definitely like a horror comedy or just, really over the top dark comedy. I highly recommend this movie. I think it was so fun and weird, but not as weird as Glorious. It was wild.
I agree with everything that Hellcat just said. I highly recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it yet and you've been interested in seeing it, you need to just go see it. It was really good. Really liked how everything came to a close at the end there. That climax was awesome. Check it out. Deadstream from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. I think this movie had a great storyline, and again, like the whole thing they're doing with the cameras and the fact that he's doing a live stream. Love the whole premise. I think the special effects in this movie were really well done, but all that being said, there's just something about the main character that made me feel like the whole thing wasn't real or was like a joke or something. Like I kept waiting for things to just stop, and all of a sudden the girl comes back out and she's like, oh, maybe it's just me. I understand they were kind of going for like maybe like an Evil Dead 2 vibe with it being a little comedy in there, but I guess it just missed the mark for me. But other than that, I would recommend this movie.
I agree. The inventiveness of the camera work and having the little chat pop up sometimes and things like that was really cool and entertaining. And I know this is one that I liked a little bit more than Psycho, but there's some people that are just over the moon about this, and we didn't really understand. I mean, I definitely do think that Joseph and Vanessa Winter have a career ahead of them, and I hope they keep making stuff. The character did kind of take me out of it as well. Something about the way that the lines were being delivered and his actions and stuff just made you feel like there was no actual impending doom. It made it seem like the whole thing was fake, and at the end it was going to be like the stream ends and he goes and gets with his crew and they're like, great job guys. I do still recommend it. It was definitely a fun and well-made film, just not as amazing as we were expecting. We Need to Do Something from 2021, which we watched on Hulu. This was another film we talked about that was a little bit of a letdown for me. I don't even really know what I was expecting. This is another film where they're trapped in a bathroom. It's an entire family this time. The little boy was annoying. I love Vanessa Shaw. Pat Healy is a good actor, and he did a good job being a jerk in this. And I don't know if I want to recommend it. I didn't really have a good time watching it. I didn't feel like I really got anything out of it when it ended. I'm really on the fence about it, to be honest with you. I guess I would just say watch it if you are bored or have nothing better to do, or if you just really like maybe one or two of the actors in it or something.
I agree with Hellcat. I just feel like this movie was just right down the middle. It was very average. The trailers made it look far better than what it actually turned out to be. One of the characters does something at the very end. I'm not going to give anything away, but one of the characters does something at the very end, and I just thought, why didn't they try that sooner? But whatever. I guess I would still recommend it. It's not the worst thing in the world, but like I said, get to it when you get to it. Incantation from 2022, which we watched on Netflix. So I remember when we finished watching this, I remember really liking it. I gave it a pretty good score here on Letterboxd. There's stuff in this that apparently I just cannot remember right now trying to talk about it, but I just remember there being a lot of weird shit. This is definitely an Asian horror film that I would recommend and you should check out.
Again, we have here some inventive camera work and an inventive premise where they're compiling a bunch of footage, including the main character speaking directly to you, asking you to repeat things and say things with her or think things along with her. I feel like it's something that I have not seen before, and that's one of the biggest reasons I enjoyed it so much. I very highly recommend this film. It's just hard to talk about without spoiling anything, so definitely check it out. VHS 99 from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. It's an anthology film. What can you say? There's some hits, there's some misses. There was definitely some good moments, but I feel like overall it was not as good as VHS 94. I believe that because VHS 94 was so successful on Shudder, they kind of rushed this one out, and I guess I would say it shows a little bit. I definitely liked the Winters segment the best, and I would say if you are bored with a flick, fast forward to their segment at the end. Oh, also the wraparound was stupid. Okay, thanks, bye.
So I also agree that this is definitely not as good as VHS 94, but it is still much better than VHS Viral. That one was just bad in my opinion. I feel like this one is just kind of average, kind of sitting right there in the middle. So I would still recommend it because I do think the last segment was really well done, and I actually like the segment with the coffin situation. I'll just leave it to that. The Woman from 2011, which we watched on Blu-ray. I feel like Lucky McKee never really disappoints. This is my first time ever seeing this. Hellcat owns this Blu-ray. I know I haven't seen all of Lucky McKee's movies, but I feel like every time I watch one, I'm just like, wow, that was freaking awesome. So again, here we are. The Woman was great. It was weird in moments and completely fucked up in other moments, but I highly recommend it and think you should go watch it.
I'm a huge Lucky McKee fan. I love Angela Bettis. I think Pollyanna McIntosh is a good actress. This movie is extremely disturbing. There are many, many, many uncomfortable and disgusting moments, but I feel like it's not that way just for the sake of being that way, like a Human Centipede sequel or something. It's not just flat out gross and ridiculous and over the top. It makes you think things and feel things, and I definitely recommend the film. Popcorn from 1991, which we watched on Shudder with Joe Bob during the Halloween hangout. I know I had seen this movie before, but I really didn't remember anything about it. I know that it has its place and that it has its fans. I just really wasn't thrilled with it, and it got to the point where I was sort of losing interest in it, even though it hits right about that 90-minute mark. It's not overly long or anything, and it's nothing against any of the actors either. Everybody did fine. The villain was awesome. I don't know, it doesn't resonate with me. I would still recommend it to see at least once.
I guess I kind of feel the same way that Hellcat does. I feel like this movie's just kind of average. I know it probably has a cult following of some kind. You know, never seeing it before. It was fun to watch, especially with Joe Bob. Never disappoints. It was fun, but I would probably never really watch it again. The Strings from 2020, which we watched on Shudder. This is another movie that we talked about in one of our favorite horror movie trailers. I feel like, again, this is a movie where they had a interesting premise and did nothing with it. Nothing really happens. There are some things that take place, but then you're like, okay, where is this going to go? And it doesn't really go anywhere, and it kind of disappoints me in that regard. I wouldn't recommend this movie.
I would definitely say this was a little bit disappointing. It just took way too long to get anywhere, and then when things finally started happening, the movie was basically over. Also, nothing is ever really explained, which, doesn't usually bother me. It's just, if you're gonna invest this much time in something and basically just watch a girl sit around and let beats play and try to come up with lyrics on the fly and stuff for so long, you want some kind of a payoff. I think the reason that I gave this movie the rating that I did was because it looked really beautiful. It just had this cold and menacing tone to it. I just really wish that there was more to it than that. I guess some of the music was cool too. I can't really recommend it either, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Cello from 2005, which is another DVD I bought from Big Lots. I actually had seen this film before and completely forgotten literally every single thing about it. When I went and looked at my Netflix, apparently I had given it a 4. And after this was over, I was like, what? I don't understand how I liked it that much. Even though there was so much cool imagery, and I really like the ghost or whatever you want to call her that was dressed in all black and stuff. She looked so cool. Other than that, this was just all over the place. We didn't understand what was going on, and a lot of the main character's actions were extremely frustrating. I would loosely recommend it. I've definitely seen worse. I think that there are some upsides to it, but overall, you can bet I lowered my 4-star rating.
I'll just say 2 things. 1, I was disappointed in this and I do not recommend it. And 2, based on the poster, I was really hoping to see a person inside of a cello case, and there's none of that. So I feel like the poster is a little misleading. For the Sake of Vicious from 2020, which we watched on Shudder. I think this is another movie that we talked about in one of our horror movie trailer videos, which you should be checking out and you'll know about all these movies. I feel like the first half of this movie or so was just kind of whatever, take it or leave it. But there's a part at the end where just everything hits the fan and it's just brutal. And I think even though this movie in the end is just an average rating for me, I think everything that happens in that third act brought the rating up, in my opinion. So for that, I would recommend it.
There's really not a lot to this movie other than the look of it and the fact that it's almost 80 minutes of fighting. That'll do it for some people, but I feel like it got a little bit repetitive for me. I wasn't completely invested in it. I agree with what Psycho said about the ending, and it was very intense and entertaining and everything. I guess I would still recommend it for viewing at least once, but I wouldn't prioritize it. House LLC from 2015. There is no need for us to go into this again. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it so much. I watch it every year in October, as close to Halloween as possible. I think it's one of the best found footage movies I've ever seen. Please don't watch the sequels. They suck. I love that this is actually scary and can still get under my skin a little bit, even though I've seen it a million times. Highly recommend.
Resurrection from 2022, which we watched on Shudder. So this was a movie that we really couldn't wait to come out, and we prioritized it. We watched it the day that it dropped on Shudder. We are both fans of Rebecca Hall, and Hellcat really likes Tim Roth, so this movie was just right up her alley. Without giving too much away, this movie is fucking weird. I almost feel like this movie is one movie entirely, and then an ending is another movie entirely. It's really, to me, I felt like it kind of took a left turn towards the end, and it just went in a direction that you don't really see coming. And I'm not saying that that's bad or anything, obviously, because I still recommend the movie and I think you should check it out.
Once again, Rebecca Hall delivers an insanely impressive performance. Tim Roth is creepy AF. This movie was just batshit crazy. It's insane to see this main character going from being this strong, independent woman to just immediately just crumbling before the viewer's eyes as soon as she sees the Tim Roth character. It's like the degradation of her entire life and how quickly she falls back into old circumstances. It has to be seen to be believed, and that ending has to be seen to be believed. I very highly recommend this film.
Halloween 2 from 1981, which we watched on my glorious Scream Factory Blu-ray. This, in my opinion, is my favorite Halloween film in the Halloween franchise. I know a lot of people don't really care for it, but for me, it was the Halloween movie that I watched the most as a child. I somehow had it on a recorded VHS, and it was the only one that I could watch, so I watched it over and over and over, and I love it. I highly recommend it. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch from 1982, which we also watched on Blu-ray. I know this movie is just remembered as the one that doesn't have Michael Myers in it, but this movie is 5 stars for me. I think anyone who's giving this hate should just immediately go and watch it and give it a second shot because it is great. Tom Atkins is great. This movie is awesome. Just don't think about it like a Michael Myers movie and you will have a blast. Trust me.
Murder Party from 2007, which we watched on my DVD. This is another movie I watch every single year. It's another one of my favorite movies of all time. I've discussed it at length in prior videos. We don't need to go into it. You just need to know that it's awesome, and if you haven't seen it, that you should ASAP. That was a double feature with good old Night of the Demons from 1988. This is a film that I have been obsessed with since I was a child. My sister and I watched it so many times. I know all the lines. Again, no need to go into it because I've discussed it at length in prior videos. I couldn't recommend it more. It is a blast.
So this is another movie that we watch every year. It's Trick or Treat from 2007, which we watched on Blu-ray. This movie was just an instant classic, 5 stars. Cannot recommend it anymore. If you have not seen this, you need to see it. You will love it, I promise.
Double feature on Halloween with Trick or Treat was Terrifier from 2016. I've been watching this every Halloween since I first saw it when it first came out. After having just seen Terrifier 2 and being super hyped about it, we were all about watching it again. This and Trick or Treat make a great pair. They're both shorter films, so you don't have to invest a whole lot of time, especially if Halloween lands on a weekday like it did this year. So very highly recommend this movie. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing? As always, we thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment if you have any horror movie recommendations, and we will add them to our watch list. Until next time.